まだソーシャルイノベーションが足りないと思いました。まだまだできる。そしてまだまだやったらもっともっと日本はいい国になる。
数えきれない社会課題からあなたの心を揺さぶるテーマが必ず見つかる多彩なプログラムをご用意しています。あなたならではのソーシャルチェンジを始めてみませんか？未来はあなたの一歩から変えられる。
皆様改めまして日本財団ソーシャルイノベーションフォーラム2019へのご参加誠にありがとうございます。これより特別企画優秀な人材が真に挑むべき問題パートを開演させていただきます。進行は日本財団経営企画広報部ソーシャルイノベーション推進チーム花岡隼人さんにお願いします。
So, welcome to the panel discussion of our session. And then I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Hayato Hanaoka. I'm the one behind the stage, actually. I'm the managing the whole forum. And how many of you attended the keynote speech from the Shinjiro Koizumi? Raise your hand, please. Okay. And how many attended for his speech? Wow, okay, sounds great. So we will have a panel discussion with Kinelet and Prasoon, but some of them didn't attend his speech first. So then I will pass to the Prasoon to introduce yourself a bit, and then Kinelet will introduce the Impact Tech and yourself, right? Okay, so let's start.
All right, thank you again, and thank you, Hayato, for having us here. My name, as you mentioned, is Prasoon, and I run a nonprofit called billionBricks, which is headquartered in Singapore, and we work across the world, but primarily in Asia. And our mission is to end homelessness in the world. We believe that today the solutions that are trying to address a problem like homelessness are not good enough, and hence the problem's not getting solved. So we try and solve the problem all the way from the solution, designing the solution itself, how do we look at the problem, and back it up with a business model, which are all completely done in a way never done before. We were founded about 6 years ago, and there are about 5,055 people who currently use our shelters in 9 countries across the world. But we really looked the first phase of our organization as the learning curve, because what I mentioned in the morning as well, that I really took 5 years as the period that would require me to learn about the industry and really innovate. So we now look at the next 5 years as the period of scale and really trying to impact at least 100,000 lives is what we are aiming for. And since our work is open source, we think we'll reach at least 1 million, if not more, in the next 5 years.
All right, thank you for the introduction. And how was the keynote speech?
So I was very nervous. And,
Okay.
and I think if I had more hair, I would have lost a few, but I've already lost quite a bit. But it was a great experience, and I was looking at the audience, very, very engaged. And I'm looking forward to now what questions you have for me.
Yeah, I think so. They have more. How do you think, Kinelet?
Well, I've been here since this is my 4th Social Innovation Forum. So I was at the first one in 2016, and I'm really happy to see how it grew. And one of the reasons I'm still sitting here is because I was here in 2016 sharing about Impact Tech, and sort of this is how it evolved. And I've been working with Hayato for the last 2 years here in Japan. And I introduced Hayato to Prasoon in Singapore, because I'm from Singapore. I'll share in a second. And this is why we're all sitting here. So I'm really happy I could help Prasoon, help Hayato, and maybe help some others. And who knows what will be next year.
Okay, great. Well, actually, I just want to mention that Shinjiro Koizumi and Kinelet is the only 2 who attended the Social Innovation Forum every year, right? So she's special. All right, so Kinet, why don't you introduce yourself and then please start the slide, please.
If you don't mind, I'll stand. This chair is a bit too high for me. So my name is Kinneret. I'm originally from Israel. I've been living in Singapore for the last 11 years. And the picture I like to show is of Merida from the Disney movie Brave. I always feel that I'm a bit brave for embarking on this startup journey for the last 10 years, ever since I've been living in Singapore. I had 2 startups that I exited. One of them I sold to Rocket Internet, which is a German conglomerate. I sold it to Food Panda, if you know Food Panda. And in the last 4 years, I'm the founder and operation manager of Impact Tech. And what is Impact Tech? It's supposed to play a movie. So I don't know Japanese, and you can really tell me if the translation is okay. So if there are no mistakes, I'm happy. If there are, please tell me later so we can make some changes. So this is Impact Tech. We believe that real innovation is not about having ideas, but it's about solving these ideas. And I heard Prasoon speak many times, and I was really, really inspired again by the way he approached the problem of people today still don't have a house. So this is part of the things that we try to do at Impact Tech. So if we can't directly impact people, we can directly try to help others that can directly impact people. We are a global company, and we bridge between innovations in terms of startups to companies and government organizations. And we try to do it in practical and effective ways. Like I said, I'm originally from Israel. In Israel, we're very practical people. We go directly at the problem. We're very direct. We don't like to go around. And this is what we try to bring to Asia, the more Israeli way of doing things, but in the Asian culture way. We have offices in Singapore. That's where I live. It's our headquarters. In Bangkok and Tokyo, and we plan to open a few more in the coming 2 years. In early 2019, we started our first acceleration program with the Nippon Foundation. It's called the Nippon Foundation Social Changemakers. 10 startups went through a 4-month journey. We had about 16 modules. We had domain experts, mentors for the startups. It ended in a very, very nice demo day. And next week, on Thursday, we're starting our next social change makers, again with 10 startups. And next year, I'll show you the picture of all the startups that joined. And we're very, very excited, and we have amazing startups. And in the panel that will start in a few minutes, I invited 2 of them, Dream Drive and Maimizu, to share a bit more. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have. And again, if there are any mistakes on the video, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add that's why nepa Foundation started this acceleration program. So far, we have almost 60 years history, and we just, we are a charitable foundation, and they're based on funding from the boat racing, 3% of revenue from the boat racing, and then we are actually we have enough funding. We annually give the many NPOs, NGOs the fundings, and so basically our support is a financial way. But I just worked for nepa Foundation for like 6 years, and then I found the problem that we need to support not only the financial way, but also the non-financial way, which is management support, PR, legal things, HR, or other things. But we don't have any, ability to do that. So I met Kineret, and Kineret's doing the acceleration program for social tech startups in Singapore. Since I know her, then we talked like, I don't know, 1 year and a half, 2 years to start this program. And then so far it's really successful, I think. And then we had, actually we will start next cohort, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
next week.
yeah, we have. And then, we had actually 40 applications. So yeah, it's really successful. And then I'm looking forward to seeing you in your room, this hall. Please, apply for that, and then I will be really happy to work with you. And it's a good time to invite the startups and to have a panel.
Yeah, so we have 2 more chairs. Yes.
Okay, could you introduce?
Yes, so I would like to, ladies first, so I'll invite Mariko from Maimizu. And Jared from Dream Drive. And we'll start first of all by asking, they'll introduce themselves, we'll ask them questions, and then we will like to have some questions from the audience. So Mariko, please introduce Maimizu and also introduce yourself.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me and Maimizu today. It's an honor to be here in such company. So thank you for the invitation, and to Nippon Foundation as well. My name is Mariko McTeer. As you can probably guess from my accent, and from how I look, I'm half Japanese and half British. I grew up in the UK, but I have been living here for nearly 6 years now. I am a co-founder of Maimizu, which is Japan's first free water refill app. And so we connect users with places that they can refill a reusable bottle for free, in the hope that we can really tackle the plastics challenge that we face right now, which is a huge overconsumption of plastic and the resulting wasting resources and also waste management issues. We are not just an app, we are creating a movement, which is to say, look, there are different ways that we can consume that don't rely on consuming plastic and limited resources. I'm really gutted because I normally carry a reusable bottle around with me, and I left it maybe on the train or in a shop today. So now I have a pet.
No, okay, I have actually glass of cup, glass water. Could you bring one, please?
It's okay. Yeah, so that's what we do, and we were recently delighted to be selected to join Impact Tech. And so we really hope, we actually only just launched in September 20th. We've been going for just over 2 months. And so we're really at the beginning of our journey, but hoping to learn as well as share any experiences that we've had today.
Thank you. Jared, please
Yes.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Jared Campion.
Oh, and just, we didn't, invite here Britain to,
Yes.
it's just by accident it happened.
Yeah, so I'm actually half as well, but half British, half Australian, so it's not quite the same. Anyway, but yeah, living in Japan 12 years, and from being here, what we're doing now is we're building camping cars, like little motorhomes, inside vans, and our goal is to send more tourists to regional Japan, to the places which are harder to reach by train, and just show like some of the great things Japan has to offer. We just made a nice little video in Izu of a town called Heda, which is an example of a place which doesn't get as much tourism as they should. So yeah, we're really passionate about people like finding a deeper Japan experience. So,
Thank you. Now, I would like to start by asking each one of you, in one word, when you think of entrepreneur, one word that resembles this really long word. Prasoon, you will start.
This is
Staring at
difficult.
me. Thank you. I think you have an answer.
Most panel discussions, you know the questions.
I forgot to send you.
So,
In one word, entrepreneur. What do you think? I will start. I'll say,
Yeah.
for me, entrepreneur resembles roller coaster.
I think it's fun.
Okay, fun.
Fun.
Okay. Now, Mariko, you're new in this entrepreneurial journey, I assume. For you, what is an entrepreneur?
I would say problem solver.
Okay. Yeah.
It's hyphenated.
Okay, I'd say persistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Mariko, you will understand in a few months why persistence is very important. Now, I know that Prasoon and Mariko, you both did some Kickstarter. Can you share a bit about this experience? Would you do it again? Would you not? And if anyone here is planning to start a startup or is planning a Kickstarter campaign, what do you suggest for them? Prasoon.
Yeah, so we did a Kickstarter about, I think 2 years ago for the shelters that you see outside Weather Hides.
Maybe we should say there's a crowdfunding, because Kickstarter's not that well known.
Oh, okay, sorry. Crowdfunding.
So we did crowdfunding to, of course, to raise funds. But I think the other advantage that we were looking for also is to create an awareness about something new that we wanted to launch. And just in 2016, what had happened was that I had put a few videos of Weatherhide and its impact online. And those had gone viral over the internet, and we did some 50 million views in about 2 to 3 months' time in total. And we wanted to take advantage of all that publicity that we're getting to actually fundraise as well. So in some ways, we were a little late because we weren't prepared and we hadn't expected that that's the kind of virality the videos will get. But we had a large database of people that wanted to get hold of Weatherhides. And hence, we started a campaign and we wanted to raise $100,000. The reason we use crowdfunding, Kickstarter as the platform for crowdfunding is because one of the things I wanted to prove to people that you can have any other product. You don't need a consumer product alone to be on Kickstarter. Even if you're doing for something else, you can actually do it, even though Kickstarter is meant for consumer products primarily. Kickstarter is also based a lot on design, and since we are a design organization, we wanted to focus on Kickstarter as the crowdfunding platform. And so our campaign, I think, was 45 days. We raised upwards of $100,000 during that period of time. It wasn't easy. If I show you the graph, we were kind of crawling, and then we kind of shot up in the last couple of days of the Kickstarter to meet the goal. And we had designed the campaign such that we had enough of PR going on, events which were happening. We brought in all the possible partners from across the world who could actually do it. And there were a lot of support system that we had to create around the campaign to make sure that it's successful. I would say that it was very, very hard, but I think it's a great experience. And I'll probably think twice before doing it again.
Okay. Mariko, can you share a bit about your crowdfunding
Yes,
campaign?
thank you. So we are actually still in the middle of our crowdfunding campaign, so yay, you should check it out. We also use Kickstarter as a platform, which a lot of people in Japan asked us why we chose that to do crowdfunding. And actually our main, one of the reasons we chose it was because it allows international engagement. So most of the Japanese platforms are still Japanese only, and we know that a lot of our initial users don't speak Japanese. So that was a decision that we had to make. But our goal, so we're currently fundraising, we set our goal for 1.5 million yen. We actually reached it in 48 hours, it was completely unexpected, to be honest. And people were saying, maybe you could have gone higher, maybe you could have set a higher goal, but a similar case, we were sort of really looking at engaging more people. And our primary goal wasn't just the crowdfunding. So we wanted to leverage, like you said too, the media attention that we were getting early on, and to really spread the message, I guess, and encourage more people to get involved. So, I mean, through the campaign, I should explain perhaps that MyMizu is new in itself, but we've been running an organization called Social Innovation Japan for over 2.5 years now. And that is a community of a lot of people who are engaged in social and environmental issues. And so when we started the Kickstarter, I think we had a huge advantage because we already had a community of people who were really interested in the topic, many people who, adopted the app as soon as we launched the pilot version. And so we weren't starting from zero. And I think the biggest challenge people find when they crowdfund is letting people know about it. And so we had that platform and we really wanted to make the most of it. And I think that's how we were able to hit our target within 48 hours because it just, spread like wildfire amongst people who already cared. And so we've had a great experience doing it. It was a lot of work getting it set up, and it was definitely not something to take lightly. But for us, it's definitely paid off. Like I said, we've reached our target, but we're also keeping pushing so that any funding that we get through that, we can continue to put back into our organization.
Okay, thank you. Now, I would like to start my second question, and I would like to start with what you said as the word that describes entrepreneur persistence. What is the most challenging thing that you had to go through during your startup journey? And why do you think persistence resembles entrepreneur?
Well, it's for me. I had the idea of Dream Drive for a long time. I always felt like growing up in a family which had always used camping cars and traveled this way. It's an idea I had for a long time, but it's not something I thought I was the right guy to do. So, but once I chose to do it, you kind of like. You've kind of got to stick to it. You kind of got to be committed for a long time to make inroads and actually make something happen. So I think if I think of someone who's an entrepreneur and I know who they are because they're a famous entrepreneur, they've been persistent on that problem for a long time, and I think it takes a lot longer for you to actually make a difference. And we're not making a difference yet, I don't think. But I think it's just that for me, that's a word where like they've done something other people haven't thought about doing for a long time until you know them for doing this thing. So that's why I'd say they must have had maybe had an idea which maybe a lot of people thought about, but they were the guys who stuck at it. So that's why.
And what is the most challenging thing you had to go through?
Deciding to do it. I think for me, just deciding that this is what I want to kind of focus my time on. Because I thought about it a while ago. It's just like making the decision, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I think you're giving up other options and other things you could be doing. And maybe to make it more interesting, since I started, I'd say it's hard to raise like capital to be able to focus on it. So that's been hard.
Okay. And Prasoon, you have the richest experience here in terms of being an entrepreneur. What was most challenging? For those who haven't heard your keynote?
I think the challenge has been for me trying to break through a lot of existing paradigms and mindsets that exist, right? So if you want to do the right thing, I think there are too many challenges. And I think there's a general attitude where we want to always poke holes in what can go wrong rather than concentrate on what could go right. Right? And this is a normal human nature, that if we look at something new, we want to try and see what could not work as opposed to what could work. And I think that's a huge challenge for us because we come up with new ideas and we know it takes time to test them out, and we know the problems as well. But the problems are what are kept in front, and that slows us down. And so for me, I think the biggest challenge has been the time. The speed at which we work or something needs to be implemented is too slow. And time is money and is expensive.
But you think it's because of you or because the people that you work with, the other stakeholders that you need to work with, they are slow? Because a startup is a very fast pace. We do things fast. We don't have time to focus. We need to do things in parallel.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to give myself an excuse, I'll put the blame on others, right? That they slow me down. But as the CEO, it's my responsibility to make things work and to speed up and overcome any of the challenge, right? So eventually the fact that the progress has been slow or slower than expected, I think it's my responsibility. But I have enough people to blame as well.
So what are the solutions from your end?
I think the solution is persistence. right? I think believe in what you're doing and understand the fact that people on the other side also don't know, right? Because no one has done it, and that's why you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, it's entrepreneurs in some ways like a designer, right? So when you design something, a client tells you what to design, you're able to see something which doesn't exist, right? I mean, if you were to design a building, they give you a brief of, okay, I want a convention center like this, but only the designer knows how it would eventually look. So the idea of creating anything from nothing is, I think, what really makes it interesting. And I think that requires you to believe that you know what's going to get done and what's the right thing, right? And what can go wrong, especially in the social sector. The benchmarks are anyways low. So even if things go wrong, it's okay, I think.
Okay, now
May I add a comment? Well, actually, the solution is maybe the Nippon Foundation in Japan. I just want to mention that because I don't want to talk about our foundation too much. But Nippon Foundation is not a governmental foundation. It's not a private company. We are in the half, right? We're just private foundation getting from the funding, which is kind of offshore. And as you saw, our chairman is speaking next to the Shinjiro Koizumi, right? He is really rising political position, so that we have strong network with the government as well as local government and companies. And so, I mean, we are the charitable organization. We can give you the grants, but also we can help you break through the existing paradigm. Or what we did is so many things. Actually, we changed the role, or we created some movement. So maybe if you want to make social innovation, please, ask me to work with, right?
Yeah, and join our next program in
right.
social change makers.
And I just wonder, are you satisfied with the glass? It's empty, right? So yeah, you can't open, right? So すいません、お水をですね注いでいただけますと、
ごめんなさい。
開けた瞬間にペットボトルを捨てなきゃいけないということになっちゃいますので、すいません、お願いします。Okay, so it's your turn. Yeah.
Forgot what I wanted to ask. Sorry.
Probably same what her.
No, yeah, I wanted to ask. So you're pretty new in the startup world. Would you do anything a bit different?
Many things. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I was fortunate enough to work. I used to help startups to go overseas and vice versa, bringing startups into Japan. And then I was lucky enough to work alongside the founders when, actually, I think one of your Social Innovation Award winners from 2 years ago. So I've been sort of in this world, if not doing it myself for some time. And so that gave me the opportunity to learn from other people's successes and mistakes too. But there's always more to learn. I think on our side, we were very scrappy to start with, which is, I think, a good thing. We just, wanted to get a prototype out there and see if people were interested. But we've also, been running on very limited resources. We haven't put in really the time to get, for example, not necessarily no strings attached, but more easily accessible funding, like grant funding early on. And so I think that really, if we'd been more proactive in seeking that kind of funding earlier on, maybe we could have committed earlier, or brought more people onto the team more earlier. So yeah, I think there are a number of things we could have done differently too.
You mentioned Prasoon before about the risk. That okay, let's take a risk. If it doesn't work, we'll start all over again. I've been working in Asia with startups for the past 10 years, and the word risk always makes people shiver in Asia because risk is something that is a bit perceived as something negative here at this part of the world, which is fine. It's not, I'm not criticizing it. How do you influence, because you work with Singaporeans, you work with Japanese, and you're both foreigners in a way. How do you influence this risk-taking approach to your colleagues from Asia? How do you tell them, in very simple words, it's fine to fail?
I think everybody who works with me is probably a risk taker, basically. So I think it just affects the people who want to join for business, especially early stages. So yeah, I think that's pretty much looking at our team. Everyone believes. I think it has to be something you're doing which they really want to see happen. In our case, like people saw, I think our early guys who work with us like from what we're trying to build, and they're like, I want to do that. And we've had people quit good jobs to join us, which I felt was too big a risk for some of these guys. But I'm super glad they joined, and it's been good so far.
I think I play quite a lucky role in that whilst I grew up overseas, my mother is Japanese, I spent a lot of time here, and so I can be sort of on the other side and understand as well. And so I'm able to have those conversations, and it depends on who I'm speaking to. Sometimes I am the complete foreigner, but sometimes, I'm able to overcome the barrier that maybe others face, and, get people to understand that I understand where they're coming from. And I think what Jared was saying about, finding people who care enough and like they have a burning passion too. I think at that point, risk becomes far less important because they want to solve the same problem as you. So, when we started with MyMizu as well, we found team members who, wanted to save the same problem, and they were willing to take on a certain amount of risk in order to do so.
Prasoon?
Yeah, I think my take is a little different. I mean, one is I want less risk takers around me, right? Because I think the more people risk take, the more competition you get, right? And if everyone's taking a risk and quitting their jobs, then who's going to come in and work, right? But I think what becomes important is that as again, I think there's a responsibility that comes as an entrepreneur, is how do you hedge the risk? And how do you reduce it for your coworkers or the other people who will come? And that's where I think things like what is the mission that you have, what is the financial security that you're providing comes in, and whether they buy into the vision or not, right? I think we as human beings know for sure that in most conditions we are getting and we are taking more than what we need. So the risk is really to let go of our desire rather than think that tomorrow we'll be on the streets. That I think human beings will not do, and we are powerful enough to kind of overcome that. So I think we should probably not think of risk too much.
Okay, I would like to ask Hayato a question. So you've been, you haven't been in the startup world until about a year ago when you started to work with us. If you had to start a startup now, what would you do, and how is working in the startup ecosystem made you be a different person? How do you see things differently?
Well, actually, the first of all, I have to ask my wife to start. This is a huge challenge, but I think what I will do is just to talk with the others, because if I will start my startup, then I have an idea. Just other guy said that if you want to start a startup, then you should talk your idea to 100 people, right? And then you can find a good solution, or maybe good idea. You can brush up, right? So what I would do is do so. Then by doing so, then I can hedge the risk, I think. Yeah, so and then I will apply for the grant to the nepa Foundation, right?
Okay, so guys, you heard Hayato. So. And do you want to start a startup?
Well, I am the manager of the Social Innovation Forum, so if I say so, it's gonna be huge risk. No, well, yeah. Actually, the everyone around me asked me to, why don't you start the startup? So yeah, why not? Yeah.
So
Actually,
Hayato will join our next cohort.
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay, back to you. 5 years from now, I know. So Prasoon mentioned 5 years as I would say the gold number, which I really agree. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? You get the funding, you get the grant. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And let's say you manage to solve significantly the homeless. Do you have a next vision after Weather Hide and Power Hide?
Yeah, so we do have, so I like to dream a lot, so I have a lot of ideas, and if somebody comes and sees my sketchbook, they'll see I've got tons of ideas in it. And like I mentioned, because our vision is to end homelessness, I think so it requires a lot more to be done. So we have 1/3 idea in our back pocket, which we've not put in yet, which we call as Urban Hide, which comes after Weather Hide and Power Hide, which is to solve the housing issue in urban areas, right? So Weather Hide solves the issue in disasters or temporary housing issue. Power Hide solves the issue in rural areas where people don't have access to finance, but land is easy. But really the biggest problem and the most hardest is in urban areas, which is where the majority of the homeless are living. So we have a concept where we are looking at creating a platform where we could match the homeless with the vacant inventory which exists in the world. So a lot of rich people invest in property for capital gains, and there's a lot of vacant housing available. In fact, in India, at any point within the middle income bracket, there are about 330,000 homes which are vacant. So we want to create a system to be able to match this, and I know some people in Hong Kong that are already doing it. So that's our vision for the future. But in the next 5 years, I think Weatherhide and Powerhide will keep me enough busy. And like I said, as an organization, we think we'll probably be building about 25,000 homes, which I think could be quite a task to do. But really, it's not about the 25,000 homes. We want the pace of the homes that we build at the end of 5 years to be faster than the rate at which homelessness is occurring. Then we'll have a way to catch up. So if there's anybody else who wants to join in to increase that pace is what we'll need, because we can't do it alone.
Okay, thank you. Jared, where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I feel in very different areas to what Prasoon and Marco are walking in, but like our goal is we see Japan as a really good location for camper van travel, basically. And if you look at somewhere like New Zealand, when people go to New Zealand, they feel the best way to see it is by camper van, because it's got so much nature and great places, small towns and scenery. And I feel Japan should be the next big place for camper van tourism, because a lot of the tourism is around Kyoto, Tokyo, and these kind of same locations where bullet trains are. But yeah, if you look at Tohoku, for example, it's an amazing space. There's very few people in these small towns and regions. They don't get much of the tourism money, but it's exactly what the tourists want. They want that small town feeling. And even the customers we have now who travel, we've had customers pick up their vans, go all the way down to Kyushu, Fushikoku, in like a 2-week trip, and they have a great time. And they're going because they have a freedom. They have the onsen, which no one else in the world has onsen. That's like a Japan thing, the way it's set up. So my vision is to see people like tourists seeing all these great locations around Japan, see these small towns have more revenue coming into them, create good jobs for people in these kind of more regional Japan. And when people come to Japan, they feel, well, we should really see it by camper van. And yeah, so that'd be our goal for the next 5 years, for people to think that's the best way, like, to see the countryside. So yeah, it's a very different kind of vision to like.
Yeah, but if I achieve my vision and I have time, then I'll come and spend time in your camper van.
Deal.
And Mariko, where do you see yourself?
So, I mean, we've started out targeting PET bottles. And a lot of people are like, why PET bottles? And honestly, it's because water is one of the most, we're surrounded by drinkable tap water in Japan. We're very fortunate in that way. You can get drinkable tap water out of almost any tap and springs. And it's also very, it's universal. Everyone drinks water. So for us, this is the first step for people to take towards a more sustainable form of consumption. So when we talk about climate change, when we talk about plastic crisis, these seem like such huge issues. And it's really hard, I think, to translate that into what can I do as an individual. And so at My Museum, we're really aiming for the bigger picture, but we realize that we have to start with a tangible first step. And so that first step for us is, let's stop using a PET bottle when we don't need it, use a reusable bottle and build an infrastructure where people can do that more conveniently. In Japan, everything's about convenience. So we have to be more convenient than the millions of vending machines and convenience stores that we have here in Japan. And so when we talk about 5 years' time, I don't think we'll be talking about PET bottles so much. I think we'll be talking much more about consuming in general. Like, do we moving away from the single-use culture that we have, and whether that's food and drink, or maybe that's the way you travel even, getting people to think more about their own actions, measuring the impact of our actions, and being able to understand what it means as a society to be consuming in a more sustainable way.
Now I have a bit of a hard question. So you're all doing social enterprises, and you all are, in a way, also raising money, because you need money to sustain and grow. when you go to investors or angel, people usually ask, okay, what is your exit strategy? What is your exit strategy? Do you have any? You don't have any? And what do you think about this question? Who wants to start?
Question.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we didn't raise that kind of money yet from like venture. That's like a venture capitalist question. And yeah, we kind of know what we want to do, and well, for one, like we're in Japan, right? So in Japan, it's easier to IPO. Like it's not like IPOing in America where it's like a big thing. A lot of companies do it, so I don't think we're really hammered with that question as much. And the kind of guys who are going to invest in our business, they're not usually asking that question, so it hasn't been a big problem for us. Like we basically plan, just to keep building this business and see what happens. But we see an opportunity, and we see a solution for like something which people say is an issue. I also see a change in the way people travel. That dragging around suitcases all the time, it takes up a lot of your vacation time. I have 3 children, and it's like, especially when you got kids, trying to drag, it just really puts you off. So I feel that the way people travel is going to change. I see electric vehicles coming in, giving you a lot more options where you got power with you as you travel. So I feel this space is going to develop a lot, and I think, so I feel like, and when we talk to people who have invested, I think they see the vision and the opportunities that kind of presents. So yeah. So I just avoided your question basically, but
no, it's okay. This is the way. I ask something, you don't need to answer it. You answer what you want. This is the panel. Yeah. Prasoon, you have a very, very far vision. Do you have an exit strategy? I assume people asked you this.
Yeah, and I've had exit strategy from day one. So if I was to ever show anyone my business plan that I did at the start, it had a very clear exit strategy, right? And there are two exit strategies. One is an easier one for a nonprofit or for anybody who's actually doing real social innovation, right? Because as opposed to a business, like he said, he wants to grow the market for himself. My job is to reduce my market, right? My job is to end homelessness. So at the end of the day, my exit is that every homeless has got a home, and then I should die as an organization, and I should have no work to do, right? So that's anyways an obvious exit strategy. But billionBricks is really a platform of innovation of housing solutions, right? Because what excites me as an entrepreneur is really coming up with these creative ideas that could scale up, that have a business model. There's new technology coming in and new ideas. And it can keep innovating those ideas. And those ideas could be taken up by somebody else who's smarter than me in scaling. Because I can't have all the skills. And I recognize it from day one, what I like and what skill I have and what I don't have. And marketing is a skill which I'm not the best person at, right? So I want people to take my ideas like the Weatherhide that you see or the Powerhide homes or something that we create and take it from me, build it bigger than me, shrink the market, you die with that idea, and let me keep innovating again and again.
Okay, fair enough. And you're pretty new in the entrepreneurial journey. Do you have an exit strategy?
We do, to some extent. Obviously, it's quite likely to change as we develop. Actually, it's very similar to yours, Prasoon, which is when we started out, we're really working in an area where ultimately it would be better if we didn't exist. So if it was so normal for people to carry their own bottle around with them, for example, and they could refill anywhere, then there would be no need for us. I should explain that we have over 8,000 sort of public points, so parks, stations, places that you can refill your bottle for free anywhere on the app. But we also have a lot of businesses on board, and they also give water for free from a tap or a filtered water. And right now that means, they might stick a sticker on their door to say, hey, you can refill for free here. But you can also look for these locations on a map so you can find where's nearest to you. Ultimately, we would like to have a world where you don't need that. You can go anywhere and you can refill. We have this shared resource, which is drinkable tap water, and it shouldn't require a PET bottle for us to access it. So yeah, on that front, our exit is we should not exist. But we also think there's a huge opportunity beyond that when we're starting to look at things like coffee or other drinks where there are financial transactions taking place, or even local governments have to manage the public refill stations that they put out, for example, in parks or in stations. And, can we play a role working with them to help them to manage them and to understand from our user data when something is broken? And so to that extent, I don't know if that would end up in an exit, because it could be, it could continue as a small but then international business where we take that business model overseas, but maintain control of what we're doing. But I also think that kind of data is very interesting to certain companies, and I'm not going to name which companies, but ones which like data on infrastructure. So that's one thing we're thinking about.
Okay. I would like to know if anybody has any questions, and I think Hayato shared the Slido before.
Well, we have Slido, and すいません、つなげていただいてよろしいでしょうか。So I think most of you are familiar with the Slido, so you can text to the question, text to the screen and question, or maybe you can raise your hands, ask question. It's okay, fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So please point to someone and ask question, or maybe we can pick the question. Just start with this one. How can we promote behavior change?
Someone asked, how can we promote behavioral change that people think about tackling real issues you mentioned earlier? Does education matter? Is attracting PR effective? Who wants to answer?
So I've been thinking about this question quite a lot as well. And I really think that the reason why we need this change, or why are we not able to tackle the issues that we discussed earlier, is really because of education. Because since the day we start, we are told that this is a system that you need to follow. You need to get educated, get a job, and then work for corporations, and then retire, and then go, right? And whatever the corporations are doing, the change is slow. You need to bring it within them. Profit is what is most important, and you don't question what exists. And I think that's where the problem starts. Because we don't know that there's an alternative to not working for a for-profit corporation, or not working with an example where there is a negative externality, right? So when we come out of MBA schools, we go and work for a corporation, and we feel very proud that we get good salaries and stuff, without understanding that it's actually creating something negative in the world. And we take pride in it as well, right? And we don't know what the alternative is. Like, so many people come in and ask me, I want to start a nonprofit, I want to do social work. How do I do it? How do I make money? I also make money, and I'm surviving. I've got 2 kids as well who are also going to school. So it is possible. But you have to give up something in order to do it, and the giving up is also not very large. So I really think it starts from the education, and I think that system needs to change. And especially, I think the business education needs to change, where it should not be about the profit, that there are alternatives to make money, make income, without making too much of profit.
I 100% agree with that. And I think, we have seen countries, for example, where the education system has been ahead of the game, and therefore you see changes in behavior coming from that. But I think in the void of any big changes to the educational system, that's kind of what my museum is trying to tackle. And actually, behavioral changes has been at the back of my mind for many years now. And I remember a couple of years ago being like, I wish we could use technology to make people live more sustainable lives, or to drive change at a corporate level through consumer behavior. And I wasn't quite able to figure out how to do that. And then with my museum, we were like, well, people aren't going to just carry a bottle because they've been told that's the right thing to do. But if we can make it attractive, if we can make it as convenient as possible, that it makes sense to everyone, then I think that's where you start to see a shift in people's behaviors. And, I actually wasn't there when it was aired, but the BBC in the UK aired this program called Blue Planet 2. And I distinctly remember hearing from my friends and going back there, the last couple of years. And this program focused on the natural world, but it made a big statement about our use of natural resources and how it's unsustainable. And then in the space of 2 years, so many people are carrying around reusable bottles. The government legislated against free plastic bags. There's been such a huge change just because people were like, this is a better option for me and for my children and for my grandchildren and from everyone to carry a bottle, and it became the attractive thing to do. And so I think that point about PR, yes, you have to be very smart about how you can do it, but if you can create it more like a pool rather than telling people what you have to do, then you can start a movement, really.
I think.
May I add a comment?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to share the good PR thing. It's that cool biz. When I'm asked that what is a good social innovation example, then I will answer this cool biz because everyone since back then, everyone doesn't want to wear the tie because it's too hot, right? Right now the climate is too hot. But when was that? Like 10 years ago or something like that. And then Minister of Education said, so let's start the cool biz. And then everyone agreed with that. Then it looks cool. And then the shops start to sell the white shirts. You can wear without tie. So that's a way of changing the behavior. So I think it is a good example.
Okay, interesting. So in Japan, you don't need to wear a tie anymore?
Well, in the summer,
In the
right?
summer, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I don't wear a tie. Yeah.
So just you have until 10 years ago, you had to wear a tie?
Yeah, everywhere you have to wear the tie. At least if you work for like a bank or if you're big corporates, you have to wear. Then you look like impolite to the others.
Okay. Every
but
day I
10
learn
years
something new.
Everything changed. So.
Okay. I like the third question. What are difficulties that you faced when you started your startup? Jared, you want to start? One thing that you faced when you started.
Opening a bank.
In Japan, opening a bank in Japan.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting challenge because we incorporated a company, and then I realized I had to pitch for bank my idea, which is kind of interesting. So I mean that jumped to mind right away. But yeah, maybe it's a Japan-based problem.
Yeah, it's a Japan-based problem.
It sounds simple, but yeah, it seemed anyway. But I'll stop there.
Mariko?
Funding.
Funding.
Yeah, for us, we've been very lean to start with, but obviously that's not sustainable. So for us, the challenge is really how quickly can we, leverage the funding opportunities around us. We're very fortunate to have started working with some companies and, in some programs too. But I mean, I think that's a challenge everyone faces, and how smart can you be about it? Yeah.
Prasoon?
I think for me, the most difficult thing was myself, right? I've got too much in my brain that I keep thinking. So I had so many ideas when I started, like, okay, why don't I do this, do this, right? So I couldn't focus. And I think focus is very, very critical. And you need to know what is most important, the first thing to do, right? And there are too many people around you who are like, oh, you need a logo, and then you need this, or you need a bank account and money. But when I started, I didn't even know the name of the organization, nothing. I just started to do eventually.
I think that's what we're going through now. It's like, you have to prioritize, but there's so many things that we could do. So I need your advice.
This is why you're joining the program.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
日本語でも質問できますので、ぜひ日本語でお願いします。You can ask a question in Japanese as well.
Yes, please.
Could someone bring the microphone to her?
Thank you for letting people ask some questions. First of all, I want to ask Prasoon first. So I have a question. You had an architect career for over 10 years, and one of the things that I was thinking in my mind that if you didn't have that career, and if you still wanted to change something like social innovation kind of startups, and would you do something, or how do you target the problem, and how would you find the passion about the problem that you want to solve? And I want to ask in two directions. If you're as a student, as a university student, or trying to focus more in the masters, or if you're an employee working in the company, I think which will be really difficult for now as a Japanese, because they're so caught up in their life and they're so hard to, they know that they want to change, but it's really hard. And I just wanted to ask, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I didn't speak about that part of thing. One is that every day I think that I started 10 years too late. So I should have probably started without doing all this work experience, which I think has little value. Or the only value probably it has is that it kind of gives me credibility that I can do architecture, I can do fancy buildings as well, but I'm doing this by choice. So I think that gives me some level of leverage that I could take on. But in terms of acquiring any skills or financial security, I don't think it was worth it to have spent 10 years of my time. I think the younger you start, the easier it is. And it wasn't that I didn't try. I did try when I was doing my master's, soon after my undergrad as well, even during my career a few times. But I think the attractiveness of a job and money was too much. So for me, in fact, after my master's, I applied to UN Habitat and some other NGOs. I was studying in the US to work. And it was taking much longer than to decide. And I had a lot of offers from corporate firms. And those were good offers. So it was just the attractiveness of the money that kept me going and going. And I did eventually strike a deal with my last company from where I eventually resigned and started billionBricks, where I said that I'll work 4 days a week. And then my idea was that I'll spend 2 days on my idea and kind of develop it. But what I learned in that, and as I worked like that for about 2.5 years, what I learned in that 4-day-a-week thing was that the commercial and the corporate work always takes precedence. So if your client calls on your holiday or something, you still take up that call, or you can't say no. And you are in that cycle where you keep thinking you are doing something, but it's not big enough. And for me, what was very important is the fact that oftentimes we try and do what we call as good along with our corporate work, which I think is too little, and it doesn't change the world. It really becomes about us feeling good rather than creating a change. So I had to break that cycle from 4 days to eventually I actually worked a cycle of 2.5 days with them as well. But eventually I had to come completely out of it. From an employer standpoint, I think what we should understand is that I think it's difficult to change people. And it's the same way with companies as well. It's difficult to change. And I keep talking about Coca-Cola as an example because I think people kind of relate to it, right? And plastic is something which is right there, right? And you think that the people in Coca-Cola don't know what they're doing with plastic? Why is it that they're not able to bring change? And this plastic is something that I've been hearing, not for the last couple of years when it's really caught on. Even as a kid, when I was in school, my school would talk about plastic 15, 20 years ago, right? So we knew about this. And you think the educated, well-learned people don't know? So I think people cannot change a corporate because if the value system's not there, it'll never change, right? And Coca-Cola is actually working on plant-based bottles now, right? But if you go to Philippines, I don't know if you've ever been to Philippines, they are now selling smaller Coca-Cola bottles which can actually create more sales. So the guys who need to be actually convinced for social innovation are not people like you and I who are already convinced. We need to have the sales guys, the CEOs of these companies sitting here, and they should be able to make the change, then it'll happen. So I think it's really onus is on us to change. We can't, it's too hard to change others in a short span of time.
Thank you.
I saw one of the questions was about motivation. I chose roller coaster as equivalent to entrepreneur because as a startup, every day is like a roller coaster. You start the day here, you finish it here, the next day is like this, and during the day is like this, so you never know what will happen, and it's a real roller coaster. So I want to ask you, what keeps you motivated to wake up in the morning and say, I want to continue, and not, oh, I'll just go back, work for a corporate, get my salary every month, and go on holidays? What keeps you motivated every day for going on this roller coaster?
Yeah, I'll answer. I think for me, it's just I think I see clearly what I'm trying to build. And for me, after being in Japan 12 years, I kind of came to a point where I didn't just want to be here just as a salaryman, working and living. My wife's is from Australia, and we kind of chose Japan as a home because we like it here. But I kind of wanted my work to be building something which I cared about and thought would be interesting and is a good place to work. And yeah, I just see clearly what I want to build. So I feel, for me, that's super motivating just to work towards that. And it doesn't, they say if you can focus on what you're doing, it doesn't feel like you're working anymore. It doesn't feel like that until you have to pay salaries to everybody. But it's definitely like you see the focus, like you want to create this cool thing, but you still got to pay the rent. You still got to pay people's salaries and stuff. So yeah, it's like it's always a focus, like that keeps you focused as well, right? So yeah.
And persistence.
And persistence, yeah.
For me, like I said, we are early in our journey, but even then, I've been running this organization for 2.5 years, and the reason, I've kept at that, and the reason I decided to launch my Mizu and work on this is because, actually very close to your point earlier about companies don't change, and I'd been talking with companies and trying to get them to adopt more sustainable practices, talking about the concept of a circular economy, 循環型経済, which is about remodeling your business to actually make it more sustainable. But unfortunately, it's really hard to change that at a company level. So that's why I was like, we need to show that there is a different way of doing this in a more agile structure, which is for us a startup structure or non-profit startup structure that can be a role model for others. And working with companies, we work with a company, it's not official yet, but just through our engagement so far, they got rid of PET bottles completely in their company already. And like just seeing small changes like that, which I know can lead to something bigger, is a huge motivation every day, even if I'm not sleeping enough.
I like the second question that we see here. How did you find your team members who are passionate as you? I think every startup knows that to find people that share the cause is very, very hard. And you really need to make people work for you as a startup. And you're not a company that earns a lot of money. So how did you find these people that are passionate as you?
So I think for us, it's a little bit easier to find people than others, right? Because a lot of times people are looking for, other than money, they're looking for why would they work for a firm, right? And how do you differentiate between two firms which are doing similar work? And why would you work? And I think I'm not talking about like the big firms. If you look at small and medium enterprises, the differentiator is very little, right? So a lot of times people just take a job because that's the company that offered them the job, or they had two options and they just picked which one paid them more, right? In our case, the motivation of people to understand what we are trying to do and how their work will contribute to something tangible and substantial is much easier. So I think finding people, and like I said in my talk earlier as well, that there are so many people who want to do stuff like this, but they don't know where to start or how to do this, or where is the opportunity, right? If you want to do something not as a corporate world, there aren't enough opportunities. So to find people is not hard, but to keep the passion alive, I think is the hard, because what people realize is that the inside working of an organization, at least like ours, is much harder than what it is outside.
Okay.
I can explain. Yeah, I have a question in Japanese, and on the top, and it says that he or she cannot find the mission of his or her life, and then she knows that there are so many issues around the world, and how you guys find your missions or find your way of your life, right? How or in what chance did you
How
find
did you
it?
wake up
Could
in
you
the
share your
morning?
experience? Could you share a story? Jared? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think you have a lot of options, and you can pretty much, I think you could pretty much choose what you want to do, right? And a lot of people choose a lot of different things, and some of these things work out great, some of these things don't. I think it's sad to choose something you don't want to do because it's a good idea, or it feels safe, because it might not make you happy, and it definitely won't make you happy if you choose something to do what you don't want to do because other people think you should do it, or so forth. I feel the best thing to do is figure out what do I really want to do and do it. But of course, depending on what that is, you may or may not be able to make money doing that, right? So I think it's a balance, right? I've tried loads of things in my life, and I was lucky enough to do well in a job I didn't necessarily like at first. But okay, I've got one piece of advice. One thing I noticed in Japan, from working in Japan for 12 years, people hate sales, eigyo. Like, they hate that job. Nobody wants to be a sales guy, but most people become sales guys. And I think a good thing to do is, if you're a sales guy, which a lot of people are, learn to like it. Like research, read a book about it. Like, how do I do sales better? If you can actually get good at these things, it can be super helpful for you to do something else. Like because everyone has to have a job and make money. So I'd say either learn to like what you do, and that if you do your job now well, that can lead to lots of opportunities. You can make more money doing that, which gives you more options to invest in what you're doing. I wasn't able to take a salary for the first 1 year of working at Dream Drive, but that was because I managed to find something, become good at something, I guess, which helped me make money to give me freedom to focus on doing what I'm doing. So I think it's a real balance, but you got to. That's I'm just saying lots of things, but I hope it was helpful for somebody today. So yeah.
Mariko,
Sorry, what was the question again?
what made you find your mission?
I feel like we overrate this idea of having like this one mission in life, and I really don't think I've found it yet. But what I know is that there's one specific issue that I feel like I can have a very active role in solving. And this might be part of, a bigger, I think I'll look back on my life and hopefully it will make sense. But, I had huge trouble committing to, doing certain things. I used to what we call parakyari in Japan, which is like have several jobs, partly because I didn't feel like I could commit to something. But with my muso, I was like, this is something that needs to be solved ASAP, and I feel like I'm the person to do it, so I'm going to do it. And who knows, in 10 years' time, I'm hopefully doing something else, because hopefully we don't need to be doing my muso anymore, and we can move on to something else. But I don't know how you feel about it, Prasoon, but I feel like, you may end up somewhere completely different based on your experiences now, too.
Prasoon?
I've spoken enough about this one.
Yeah, I think so.
But I want to ask, I saw a question about the cultural difference between Japan and the countries you come from. Now, Hayato, I had the honor to bring Hayato and 9 other people from the Nippon Foundation to Israel, my home country, to learn about the startup ecosystem and innovation in Israel. And I want Hayato to share the differences that he saw between Israelis and Japanese.
Oh, there are so many. There are so many. The one thing I can tell you that's the Israelis are super open-minded. Right, I have a story. When we visited Jerusalem, and there is a tour guide, and she says, "Okay, if I have 5 minutes to with Kinneret, and then we can be the best friends." Right? In Japan, it takes a year, right, to be best friend. I think so. This is a difference. So if you wanted to start startup, then you have to talk with the many guys, right? I mean, you have to sell yourself, right? You have to, be open-minded to everyone, right? But in Japan, I mean, Japanese, right? Japanese. Most of Japanese don't want to, don't want to, speak up, right? And to be too open-minded. Well, we're told that you should do in that way. So that's a big difference, yeah.
But do you feel that you changed maybe personally because you're interacting more with people from other cultures?
Well, actually, I stayed in London for 5 years in my childhood, so maybe I am too open-minded. But I think, we as a Japanese should change slightly in that way in order to, make innovation. So, yeah, personally, all right. Others, still do things. Yeah.
I'll ask both of you, because both of you are British, you're half Japanese, you live in Japan. What are the biggest differences you see between Japanese working culture, and the British working culture?
So I only worked in Australia because I left England when I was 16.
It's part of the Commonwealth countries. So.
Same thing, yeah, England. Yes. So, I guess even like there's a big difference between English people and Australian people and Japan. I noticed in Japan people are a lot more reluctant to start a business, and people are more likely to continue working their whole life for corporation, even though I feel it's a lot of opportunity in Japan. That's kind of why I'm here. I feel that would be the big difference. Australia, and I think in that way, England and Australia and Japan are more similar. People don't want to work for themselves so much. They'd rather work for a company and enjoy their weekends.
In England, Australia, and Japan?
No, Australia, people are more likely to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Everybody
be on
wants
the
to
beach and surf.
Yeah, they all want to. Australia, they're very DIY. They just want to take control. If they work for a company, it's so they can figure out how to do the same thing themselves. And I feel I felt when I went back to England for the first time in 16 years that the British are more like the Japanese, where they're just happy. They never considered starting a company. But at least my hometown, a small town. So yeah, so I'd say that would be the difference. Like more, I think Australians are more risk takers, but they've got a lot of safety nets in Australia. You have a lot of systems and facilities set up for that, which makes it easier to take that risk. So.
Yeah, I mean, coming from both countries, I think number one, England, Japan, we apologize too much in both countries. すいません, sorry. Like that's a big shared sort of cultural area that we have. But actually, I think what Jared said about risk is really important. And one of my sort of observations being here in Japan is not necessarily that people are more risk averse for the sake of it, but you know, there's huge implications if you try something new here and you fail. And you know, you're going to struggle to get by in society if you start your own startup still, and it doesn't go well. So I think we don't have enough safety nets, and I think the societal attitude towards entrepreneurship in Japan limits what people are willing to do and the risks people are willing to take on. I get away with it because I look like this, but I know that that's different for you know, people who look Japanese and are. The other thing I wanted to point out was sort of a difference in terms of a sense of ownership, and I think this comes to the education system. But I think in the UK we see things more as, you know, our own responsibility to solve the problems that are in front of us. And I think here I sense more of a sense of, oh, well, you know, as a company maybe this is our job, but I don't have an individual responsibility if something comes up that's unexpected to deal with it. That's sort of more of an anecdotal observation that I've seen working in both. But
I'll ask Prasoon. Your business is here in Japan because you live in Japan. Prasoon, how do you see, one of the questions here, how do you see Japan as an attractive market for what you're doing?
So I think the problem that we are solving is across the world, right? So and our take is also that it's not a developing or a developed country problem. And that's how we build our solutions as well, which are agnostic of the location, right? So we don't typecast that, okay, the homeless in India need a different or a poorer quality of house as opposed to maybe the homeless in Japan. And that makes, I think, relevance of our work quite strong in Japan as well. In fact, I had mentioned to Hayato earlier that when our videos had gone viral about Weatherhide, we did receive requests from Japan as well, where people wanted to get Weatherhides to store in their homes so they could use it when maybe a disaster occurs. So we do see an applicability of our products globally. And we do receive requests from most parts of the world the moment a disaster occurs in any part, because our supply chains are designed to just simply ship. So we do think there's an appropriateness of what we are doing in Japan, especially with power heights, where we are now looking at alternative energy, we are looking at carbon footprint, we are looking at self-sustaining homes. I think those probably have even a greater applicability in a place like Japan.
And we have 1.5 minutes, so I'd like to ask each one of you to share one short, small tip that you would like to give anybody in the audience that is thinking of starting a social enterprise. We'll start with you, Jared.
Yeah, I think just do it would be the one short tip there, and talk to Hayato and Nippon Foundation.
Marita?
I'd say come to one of our Social Innovation Japan events. We run a monthly pitch night for SDG projects, and actually it's a really, really great way to share your idea and to get other people involved. And when it comes to, you know, finding other people who want to work on it with you, it's a really great opportunity. So even if it's not at one of our events, just share what you want to work on and get some feedback and just do it, I think.
And Prasoon?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I never ever give advice because I think, but come and talk to me. I'm very open to share my experiences. And if someone's willing to take a plunge, we are hiring as well. So, and you're willing to move to Singapore, then come and join us.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
So thank you very much, and everybody will stay here if you have any questions, or if we didn't have time to answer your questions.
And I wanted to have a look in the Weatherhide outside the store. So,
Prasoon's tent.
yeah, after this session, Prasoon will take you to the Weatherhide, his product, and then he will explain a bit, and then you can ask a question. There are so many there's a huge hole. So yeah.
And we'll see how many of you can fit in.
Yeah. And take photos and Instagram and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
花岡さん、そして皆様ありがとうございました。今一度登壇者の皆様へ大きな拍手をお願いいたします。以上をもちまして特別企画優秀な人材が真に挑むべき問題は終了させていただきます。明日も朝10時からホール B5 およびホール B7 におきましてさまざまなプログラムを開催しております。皆様のご参加をお待ちしています。なおご利用いただきました同時通訳レシーバーはお席に置いたままで結構です。繰り返しご案内いたします。ご利用いただきました皆様にご利用いただきました同時通訳レシーバーはお席に置いたままで結構です。なおお出口混雑しますのでお出口に近い方から順にご移動をお願い申し上げます。改めまして本日は日本財団ソーシャルイノベーションフォーラム2019へのご参加誠にありがとうございました。